In the quiet village near Kitgum lived a young girl named Akello. Her family was poor, but her parents had one dream: to send their daughter to school so she could have a better life. They worked tirelessly, doing odd jobs to save money and send her to Sacred Heart Secondary School in Gulu. Akello was determined to succeed, hoping that her education would one day lift her family out of poverty. At school, Akello became close friends with Aapiyo, a girl from a wealthy family. Aapiyo's parents were successful business people, and she had everything Akello could only dream of: fancy clothes, expensive gadgets, and trips abroad. Despite their differences, the two girls became inseparable. Akello admired Aapiyo's confidence and charm, while Aapiyo adored Akello's humble and kind-hearted nature. Aapiyo often helped Akello with school fees, food, and other necessities, making their bond even stronger. After completing their secondary school exams, both Akello and Aapiyo were accepted to Gulu University. The excitement of continuing their education together was overwhelming. They planned to share a hostel room and spend the next chapter of their lives as best friends. To celebrate, Aapiyo organized a trip to Aru Falls before the start of the semester. Although Akello hesitated at first, she agreed when Aapiyo offered to cover all the expenses. During the trip to Aru Falls, fate took an unexpected turn. There, the two girls met Ben, a charming and intelligent young man. But Ben wasn't just anyone. He was the son of a billionaire businessman, living a life of wealth and privilege. Although both Aapiyo and Akello were attracted to Ben, it was Akello who caught his attention. Her natural beauty, simplicity, and kind spirit drew him in. Aapiyo tried to charm him with her outgoing personality, but Ben was enchanted by Akello's quiet grace. As the days passed, Ben and Akello grew closer, and they quickly fell in love. Akello was amazed by how well they connected, despite coming from such different worlds. Aapiyo, however, was consumed with jealousy. She had always been the center of attention, the girl who got whatever she wanted. But this time, it was Akello who had captured Ben's heart, and Aapiyo couldn't handle it. Back in Gulu, the friendship between the two girls began to crack. Aapiyo could no longer hide her bitterness and envy. She felt betrayed by Akello, believing that she had stolen Ben from her. One evening, she confronted Akello, accusing her of using her innocent appearance to manipulate Ben. "You're just a poor village girl, Akello. Ben is too good for you," Aapiyo spat, her words cutting deep. Akello, hurt by her friend's harsh words, tried to explain that her love for Ben was genuine. But Aapiyo wasn't interested in listening. She was determined to break them apart. In her jealousy and rage, Aapiyo hatched a cruel plan. One night, when they were out for some drinks at a nearby cafe, she secretly poisoned Akello's drinks. The poison made Akello severely ill, and she was forced to return home to her village. Her parents sold everything they had, waza, livestock, crops, even their small piece of land, Jinzi, to pay for her medical bills. Though Akello eventually recovered, her family was left with nothing, and she had no choice but to drop out of university. Her dreams of finishing her education were shattered. In Gulu, Aapiyo wasted no time in twisting the truth. She told Ben that Akello had left without saying a word, abandoning him and their relationship. Ben, heartbroken and confused, believed Aapiyo's lies. As time passed, Aapiyo comforted him, and slowly she drew him closer to her. Eventually, Ben proposed, and Aapiyo eagerly accepted, knowing that she had succeeded in taking him away from Akello. But fate had another plan. One hot afternoon, just days before the wedding, Ben was driving through the busy streets of Gulu City when he noticed a familiar figure at the roadside, selling fruits near a traffic light. He slowed down, taking a closer look, and his heart sank. It was Akello. Her once bright eyes were dull with exhaustion, and her once graceful figure was now frail from hardship. Her hands were rough, and her clothes were worn out. Ben parked his car and rushed over to her. "Akello?" he called out, disbelief written on his face. Akello turned, startled to see him. As their eyes met, Ben was filled with a mix of emotions, relief to see her alive, but also anger and sadness. "Why did you leave without saying anything? You just disappeared," Ben asked, his voice filled with hurt. Tears welled up in Akello's eyes as she explained everything. She told him how she had nearly died from illness, how her parents had sold everything to save her life, and how she had been too ashamed to come back to Gulu. "I couldn't face you, Ben," she said, her voice trembling. "I lost everything, my health, my education, my family's livelihood." Ben listened in shock. The anger he had felt melted into sadness as he realized the immense suffering Akello had endured. But his heart broke even more when Akello asked him about Aapiyo. "Aapiyo and I, we're getting married," Ben said, his voice heavy with guilt. Akello's face turned pale. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her heart, already burdened by the weight of her struggles, shattered into pieces. Without saying a word, she turned and ran towards the corridor of a nearby building, sobbing uncontrollably. Ben stood there, torn between his past with Akello and his present with Aapiyo. He knew he still loved Akello deeply, but he also felt bound by his commitment to Aapiyo. His mind raced as he replayed the events of the past, piecing together the truth. Aapiyo had lied to him, manipulated him, and taken advantage of his heartbreak. The next few days were filled with confusion for Ben. He knew he couldn't marry Aapiyo without confronting the truth. On the day of the wedding, as the guests gathered in the church, Ben's heart was heavy with doubt. He couldn't stop thinking about Akello, the love they had shared, and the pain she had endured. As Aapiyo walked down the aisle in her stunning wedding gown, smiling confidently, Ben's mind was elsewhere. He could barely hear the music, the priest, or the guests. His thoughts were consumed by Akello, the girl he had loved and lost. Then, just as the ceremony was about to begin, the church doors creaked open. There, standing in the doorway, was Akello. She looked weak, but determined, her eyes filled with sorrow and strength. Ben's heart skipped a beat as he saw her. Without hesitation, he turned away from Aapiyo and ran towards Akello. "Akello!" he called, his voice echoing through the church. "I'm so sorry, I didn't know. Please forgive me." Tears streamed down Akello's face as she looked at him. "Ben, I never meant to leave you. Aapiyo poisoned me, and I had no choice but to leave." Ben turned to Aapiyo, fury in his eyes. "Is this true?" he demanded. Aapiyo, now exposed in front of everyone, had no choice but to admit her deceit. She nodded slowly, tears of regret spilling from her eyes. "Yes, it's true," she whispered. "I was jealous and I didn't want to lose you." Ben shook his head in disbelief. "How could you do this to us? You've hurt both Akello and me." Aapiyo, overcome with shame, stepped toward Akello. "I'm so sorry, Akello. I let my jealousy destroy everything. Please forgive me." Akello, though heartbroken, found it in her heart to forgive her friend. "I forgive you, Aapiyo," she said softly, "but things can never go back to how they were." Aapiyo nodded sadly, knowing that her actions had cost her not only Ben, but also her closest friend. With her head bowed in shame, she quietly left the church, disappearing from their lives. Ben, now free from Aapiyo's lies, held Akello tightly in his arms. "I've always loved you, Akello. I should have never doubted you." Akello smiled through her tears. "I never stopped loving you either, Ben." In the weeks that followed, Ben canceled the wedding with Aapiyo and focused on helping Akello rebuild her life. He supported her family financially, ensuring they could recover from the hardships they had faced. And most importantly, he and Akello rekindled their love, stronger than ever. Later, they married in a small, intimate ceremony, surrounded by close family and friends. Their bond, forged through trials and heartache, was unbreakable. Together, they lived a life full of love, gratitude, and hope for the future.